It was a warm Saturday evening in June 2025, the kind of balmy night that used to make me, Dorothy Thompson, Dottie to those who know me, feel alive. The backyard of my daughter Ellen's house glowed with twinkling fairy lights, and the smoky aroma of barbecue hung in the air. Today was Sophie's high school graduation party, a grand send-off before she headed to college. I'd spent the entire week helping Ellen plan, handcrafting congratulatory banners, baking Sophie's favorite chocolate strawberry cake from scratch, and arranging mason jar centerpieces in navy and gold, her school colors. I stood by the drinks table, sipping lemonade, my back aching slightly from hours of prep since dawn. Smiling, I watched Sophie from a distance. She was radiant, tall, confident, wrapped in the glow of youth and laughter. She's really grown up, I thought, my eyes misting with what I believed were happy tears. She was surrounded by friends, all in crop tops, denim shorts, and trendy sneakers I couldn't name. They snapped photos, striking poses with balloons that read, Class of 2025. Carrying the freshly unboxed cake, I walked toward them slowly, eager to join the celebration. With a gentle smile, I called, "Sophie, sweetheart." That's when she turned to her friends, giggled, and said, loud enough for the group, and me, to hear, "Oh my gosh, she's way too old to be here. That's my grandma." The girls erupted in laughter. A few covered their mouths in mock surprise, as if I'd gate-crashed a party I wasn't invited to. I froze, my hands gripping the cake tray. In that single, careless sentence, she sliced into a part of me I didn't even know could bleed. I smiled, a practiced, tight-lipped smile, the kind women my age wear when we're dismissed, insulted, or forgotten, but don't want to make a scene. I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. Ellen was across the yard, chatting with a neighbor. She didn't hear, or if she did, she pretended not to. No one came to my side. No one pulled Sophie aside to say her words were out of line. I set the cake on a table near the blaring speakers, my hands trembling slightly, though I doubt anyone noticed. I looked around, and for the first time that day, I truly realized I wasn't part of the celebration anymore. I was background noise, a burden, an old woman with silver hair and orthopedic shoes who didn't belong in this world of music, youth, and bright futures. In that moment, something inside me quietly collapsed. I didn't cry. I didn't shout or storm out dramatically. I turned, walked to my car, and drove home. No one stopped me. Not Ellen, not Sophie, the granddaughter I'd diapered, fed, and cradled through fevers and heartaches. When I got home, still wearing the small brooch Sophie gave me in middle school, I poured a glass of water, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank account. I pulled up the $5.29 college savings plan I'd started for Sophie when she was 2. Every birthday, every Christmas bonus, every tax refund went into it, even when I needed a new water heater or an MRI. The balance read $82,350.47. I stared at that number for a long time, then clicked withdraw and whispered to myself, she may think I'm too old to be here, but she's about to learn how much being here cost me. Before the party, before the silence, before that mocking giggle, I would have said my life was full. Not perfect, not glamorous, but full. I raised Ellen alone after my husband George died in a trucking accident when she was 12. It was a frigid winter night, and it ended swiftly, brutally. After that, it was just me. I worked as a nurse at the local hospital for 40 years. It wasn't an easy job. Long night shifts, patients in pain, life and death decisions. But it mattered. I believed in showing up, in being dependable, and I carried that belief home. When Ellen got pregnant with Sophie at 19, I didn't scold or shame her. I held her hand and said, "We'll figure it out." And we did. I was at every prenatal appointment, holding Ellen's hair during morning sickness, pacing outside the delivery room when Sophie was born. When I first held Sophie, all 5 pounds 8 ounces of her, something in me sparked. A second chance, a new chapter. I looked at her and wanted only to secure her future. I opened the college fund a week after she was born. I still remember the bank teller, Betty, smiling and saying, "You're a wonderful grandma." And I tried to be. I didn't boast about what I gave. That wasn't my way. But behind the scenes, I poured everything into Sophie. Every birthday, I bought books instead of toys, hoping she'd love stories as I did. Every Christmas, I added $600 to her fund. When Ellen couldn't afford daycare, I retired earlier than planned to care for Sophie. I changed her diapers, taught her to tie her shoes, and made pancakes every Friday shaped like the letter S. We had rituals: hot cocoa after school, watching old movies like The Sound of Music, making scrapbooks. Sophie called me her best friend. She'd fall asleep on my shoulder, even when she was too big to fit comfortably. At 9, she wrote in a Mother's Day card, "Grandma, you're like a mom, but with more hugs." I still have it, glitter-stained and full of love. Ellen and I had our ups and downs. She was grateful, but over time, gratitude turned to expectation. As Sophie hit her teens, I became just grandma. They stopped asking how I was. When I had knee surgery, neither visited. I hired a nurse. I told myself, they're busy, building their lives. That's what I wanted for them, right? I let things slide, made excuses. I thought their distance was normal. I tried not to take it personally when Sophie stopped calling after school. I told myself not to be needy, not to be dramatic. I was lucky to be part of their world, and I believed it. The first sign wasn't loud. It was subtle, the kind of moment you miss unless you're paying attention. It started a year before the party. I was in my kitchen on a Thursday evening, sipping chamomile tea, waiting for Sophie's call. Since 5th grade, we had a ritual. Every Thursday after school, she'd call to share something new: math, gossip, or how much she hated gym. That week, the phone didn't ring. I waited until 8 p.m., then texted, "Missed our chat today. Everything okay?" No reply. The next morning, Ellen called, sounding distracted, not concerned. "Oh, Sophie's busy. You know how teens are. She'll catch up soon." I laughed it off, telling myself, teenagers. Probably homework or a crush. But 1 week became 2, then 3. The calls didn't resume. One afternoon, I stopped by their house with homemade apple butter and a book I thought Sophie would love. A story about a girl rebuilding her life after family rejection. It felt fitting, but I didn't say so. Ellen answered, surprised. "You didn't say you were coming." I smiled, holding up the jar and book. "Just dropping these off." She took them, but didn't invite me in. "Sophie's upstairs with friends. She's in her own world lately." I peered past her, hearing laughter, young voices echoing off walls I used to belong to. "Tell her I said hi," I said softly. "Sure," Ellen replied. "She'll love the book." She never mentioned it again. The next red flag came on Sophie's social media. I saw a group selfie, Sophie in the center making a duck face. The caption read, "We don't do landlines or grandma drama." My heart skipped a beat. I read the comments, laughing emojis, LOL, yeah, from her friends. I wasn't tagged, but I felt targeted. I left a comment. Looks fun, miss you, sweetheart. Hours later, I checked back. My comment was gone. Maybe a mistake, I thought. Maybe she hit the wrong button. But when I called that night, it went to voicemail. I kept trying. I sent postcards from the botanical gardens. I mailed a delicate silver leaf necklace from a craft fair. Simple, pretty. No thank you, not even a text. Then came the school play. Sophie had a small role in the spring production, Ellen told me over the phone. I bought tickets immediately, excited. I ironed my best cardigan, made a tulip bouquet, and arrived early for a good seat. The auditorium buzzed, parents waving to kids in the front rows. Sophie walked on, delivered her lines, and left without glancing at the audience. I clapped until my palms stung. After the show, I waited by the stage door. Kids poured out, hugging friends, snapping selfies. Ellen and Sophie emerged minutes later. I called, "Sophie?" She turned, saw me, then looked away, pretending not to hear. Ellen looked uneasy. "Oh, Mom, she's overwhelmed. You know teens." I nodded, flowers in hand. That night, I left the tulips on their porch. The next morning, I saw them, wilted and unopened, in their trash when I dropped off a borrowed dish. That's when something in me shifted, like a floorboard creaking underfoot. I wasn't just being left out. I was being erased, quietly, piece by piece. For the first time, I wondered if love, even deep, unconditional love, could survive being taken for granted too long. You don't always notice you're being erased, not at first. It doesn't come with a scream or a slammed door. It comes in whispers, glances, forgotten birthdays. It happens while you're still folding their laundry, bringing soup when they're sick, smiling as you fade. After the play, I told myself it was a phase. Teens pull away, everyone says. But with Sophie, it felt different. She wasn't just growing up, she was outgrowing me. The calls stopped. No updates on school, boys, or books. My texts were ignored or answered with K or OK. I'd spent years nurturing that girl, holding her through nightmares, driving her to spelling bees, sewing Halloween costumes. I remembered her begging for one more bedtime story. Now, if I spoke more than a few sentences, she stared at her phone. One Saturday, I offered to take her shopping. She needed a dress for the senior banquet, and I'd saved up for something special. I picked her up, excited to surprise her, even wearing lipstick. Soft pink, she once called, classy. At the mall, she barely looked up from her phone. I said, "There's a new boutique I found. The owner was a patient of mine." She cut me off. "Grandma, no offense, but can we skip the back-in-your-day stuff? I just want to go where my friends shop." I laughed nervously, hiding the sting. "Of course, lead the way." In the store, she picked a black sequin dress I thought was a bit much, but I stayed quiet. I stood back as she posed in the mirror, snapping selfies. Then I saw her post one captioned, "Shopping with the elderly." It popped up on my phone from the account I still followed, though she rarely acknowledged me. I said nothing, paid for the dress, and drove her home. She barely said thank you before slamming the car door. The next week, I brought a pan of lasagna, Ellen's college favorite, made from scratch, layered with love and seasoning. Ellen answered in workout gear, clearly not expecting me. "Oh, I thought you'd call first." I smiled, holding the pan. "Just wanted to surprise you. It's Sophie's favorite, remember?" She took it, but didn't invite me in. "Sophie's out with friends. Honestly, Mom, she's on a no-carb kick." I stood there, feeling foolish, like I'd shown up to a party that ended without notice. "You can freeze it," I said softly. She nodded. Sure. The door closed. A week later, she texted, "Thanks for the food. Call first next time." Not, "Thanks for thinking of us," or, "Sophie loved it." Just instructions to be more convenient. That's what I'd become. An inconvenience, an obligation, a presence tolerated, not cherished. The worst part? I kept trying. I sent money when Sophie mentioned needing prom shoes. I mailed handwritten notes saying I loved her. I left voicemails singing her favorite lullaby from childhood. Nothing came back. I was giving into a void. It wasn't just what they said. It was what they didn't say. The thank yous that never came. The invitations that never arrived. The way I learned Sophie's milestones through social media instead of her. Once, she was in the local paper for a science award. I didn't know until a church friend showed me. I sat in the church parking lot, staring at her photo, thinking, I used to know everything about her. Now I know nothing. I wasn't just being left behind. I was being forgotten. Sophie's graduation party felt like a celebration I'd waited my whole life for. Despite the signs, fading calls, awkward silences, curt replies, I showed up with my heart open. Hope is a hard habit to break, especially when wrapped in memories of baby giggles and lullabies. I arrived early, carrying the chocolate strawberry cake I'd stayed up until midnight baking. 3 layers, fresh strawberry frosting, hand-piped gold flowers matching her graduation stole. My back ached from hours in the kitchen, but I was proud. It wasn't just dessert, it was a gesture, a memory, a final gift before her next chapter. The backyard was a Pinterest dream. Twinkling lights, navy and gold streamers, a banner reading, "Congratulations, Sophie!" Speakers blasted pop music I didn't recognize, and folding tables overflowed with catered food. Teens in ripped jeans and crop tops mingled with adults in business casual. I waved to Ellen, busy at the drinks table. She flashed a quick smile and mouthed, "Thanks," before darting off to talk to someone I didn't know. I found a shady spot, set the cake gently on the dessert table, and adjusted the foil to keep the frosting pristine. Watching Sophie from across the yard, surrounded by friends, I saw her shine, confident, the girl who owned every room. She hadn't seen me, so I walked closer, hoping to surprise her, maybe hug her, maybe give her the small envelope in my purse, a short note, loving words from me to her, tucked away like a secret. As I approached, I heard laughter, high-pitched, giddy, the kind that makes you feel younger or older, depending on who's laughing. Sophie was mid-story, hands waving animatedly. I stood behind the group, waiting for her to notice me. Then she said, clear as day, "Oh my gosh, she's too old to be here. That's my grandma." Her voice wasn't angry, just amused, like I was a punchline, my presence laughable. Her friends burst into giggles. One girl whispered something, another laughed so hard she snorted. Sophie didn't correct them, didn't say it was a joke, or that I'd raised her when her mom was still in school. She just smiled, like it was true, like it was funny, like I was nothing. My body stilled. It felt like a needle pricked my heart, not deep enough to kill, but enough to let something vital leak out. Something inside me curled inward. I smiled, not from joy, but from training. The smile women use when the room laughs at us. We smile when loved ones reduce us to a joke, pretending it doesn't hurt. I stepped back. No one noticed. I returned to the dessert table, uncovered the cake, placed the serving knife beside it, and made sure it looked perfect. I stood there, wondering if Sophie would come over, if Ellen would whisper to her. That wasn't okay. No one came. I picked up my purse, the envelope still inside, and slipped out the side gate. No drama, no tears, no raised voice. But as I stepped onto the sidewalk, I realized something chilling. They weren't just laughing at me. They were laughing without me. That hurt more. I drove home in silence, the only sounds the click of the blinker and my heartbeat in my ears. Somewhere between that backyard and my front porch, a line was crossed. One no cake, card, or love could uncross. I didn't storm out of the party. There was no scene, no shattered plate, no tearful speech. No one even noticed I left, and maybe that broke me most. I walked to my car, hands steady, clutching my purse like it was the only part of me still holding shape. The purse Sophie had decorated with stick-on rhinestones at 6. In the front pocket was the note I'd written that morning. Sophie, I'm so proud of you. I've loved you every day of your life and always will. Love, Grandma. She never read it because I never gave it to her. I sat in the car a long time before starting it. 20 minutes, maybe more. I stared at the house, watching teen silhouettes through the windows, hearing bursts of laughter, music humming in the summer air. Somewhere in there, my cake was being sliced, a piece of me still present, but no one missed it. I didn't feel anger, not yet. It was something quieter, heavier, like grief, not for a person, but for the place I thought I held in someone's life, a place I'd nurtured, protected, poured into like a garden I believed would bloom forever. You don't realize you've been pushed out until you're outside the walls. I drove home slowly. Each red light was a moment to question if I was overreacting, too sensitive, too emotional. Words women like me hear when we name our pain. So I kept my lips sealed, even in the silence of my car. When I walked into my quiet house, lights blinking from timers set years ago, numbness wrapped me like a shawl. I kicked off my shoes, changed into my nightgown, and sat on the bed's edge. I considered calling Ellen just to say, "That really hurt." But I didn't want to hear, "Oh, Mom, she didn't mean it," or worse, "Don't take it so seriously." I'd taken everything seriously my whole life. I sat there, hands in my lap, bare feet on the hardwood. Then, like a switch flipped, I remembered the college fund I'd started when Sophie was toddling. Every holiday, every tax refund, every extra shift. I saved for her, quietly, faithfully, asking nothing in return. I stood, went to the kitchen, and pulled out the accordion folder of financial papers. I found the login sheet, my handwriting neat, labeled Sophie's College Future. I opened my laptop and logged in. $82,350.47. The number stared at me like a stranger. I hovered over withdraw funds, but didn't click. Instead, I whispered, "Am I doing this for her or clinging to what we were?" I closed the laptop and leaned back. That's when it hit me, painful but clear. I didn't belong to them anymore. Not the way I thought. Not in a way that made love feel safe. They didn't force me out. I'd walked away that night. I didn't cry, didn't plan revenge, didn't draft long messages or rehearse speeches. I stood up from the emotional table where I'd fed everyone but myself and walked away. Not with rage, not with drama, but with a broken kind of peace. I wasn't ready for what came next, but I was done waiting to be seen. Rock bottom isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet Tuesday morning, a bowl of oatmeal gone cold, a phone that doesn't ring, a mailbox full of ads but no letters, a calendar with blank days. 2 weeks passed since the party. I hadn't spoken to Ellen. Sophie didn't reach out. No thank you for the cake. No apology for her words. Nothing but silence. I told myself I needed space, that I was choosing peace. But peace, I learned, can feel like loneliness when no familiar voice breaks the quiet. My house's walls echoed differently, once filled with humming, TV reruns, phone calls, the clatter of stirring sauces or chopping vegetables. They now felt hollow. I was living in a shell of a life I once loved. One night, I made dinner for one, a simple soup. I set the table as always, pouring water into 2 glasses from muscle memory. Sitting down, I realized I'd set a place for Sophie. I stared at her empty chair for nearly an hour, the spoon in my hand unmoving. The next day, I visited the community center where I'd volunteered every other Friday. I hadn't been in months. Life got busy, my knees ached more, and lately, I'd felt unwelcome. I walked into the rec room and saw new volunteers laughing around the coffee cart. I smiled and waved, but no one recognized me. The director glanced up from her clipboard. "Oh, hi, here for yoga? It's down the hall." I said nothing, gave the same tired smile from Sophie's party, and left. Driving home, the radio played a song Sophie and I used to sing in the car. I turned it off. Memories hurt more than silence. At home, I sat on my bed, staring out the window. I thought of calling Maggie, but we hadn't been close since her husband died, and I lacked the energy to explain why I felt like a ghost in my own family. That night, I opened an old photo album, its thick leather cover embossed with Sophie's name in gold. Each page told a story of the life I gave her. Her first tooth, school concerts, her 11th birthday when she wanted a mermaid theme, and I hand-sewed tails for her dolls. I was in every photo, right beside her. I closed the album, held it to my chest, and cried. Not a loud sob, but a slow, aching leak from my eyes as I rocked in the dark. My breath stayed shallow, my lips closed. It wasn't a cry for comfort. It was a cry without witness, without audience, only for release. I felt ashamed for hoping they'd notice my silence, that they'd text, call, show up, say, "We miss you, we're sorry." No one did. That was rock bottom, not the betrayal, not the comment, not the untouched cake. It was knowing no one was coming. For someone who'd spent her life being there, that realization broke something fundamental. For once, I had no one to pour into and nothing left to give. It happened on a rainy afternoon, the kind that soaks the garden in smells of memory. I was reorganizing a bedroom cabinet I hadn't touched in years, filled with old utility bills, unused coupons, and holiday cards from long ago. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just wanted to feel useful. When your phone's silent and your house is still, organizing becomes therapy, each paper a reminder of past purpose. Then I found it, a thick, faded envelope labeled in my handwriting. Sophie's College Fund Records. I sat on the bed and opened it slowly. Inside were bank printouts, every deposit I'd made to her 529 account since she was a toddler. Meticulous handwritten logs, a spreadsheet from when I worked extra hospital shifts, scraping by but making it work. Some years I contributed $75. Others, I saved $1,500. Christmas bonuses, tax refunds, birthday checks from relatives, all redirected to her account. 17 years of sacrifice, believing that if I gave enough, loved enough, helped quietly enough, I'd always be valued, respected, remembered. My eyes welled, but I kept flipping through. At the envelope's back was something else, A folded acceptance letter addressed to me from the New England Writers' Fellowship, dated 1983. I'd forgotten it. A lifetime ago, before Ellen was born, I'd applied on a whim in my late 20s, fresh from a community college creative writing course. A professor urged me to submit a short story, and I was accepted. The fellowship offered 8 months of room and board, a Vermont cabin, time to write, to breathe. I never went. Ellen came early, then hospital bills, then George left, then work, always work. I stared at the yellowing paper, its letterhead wrinkled and soft. I'd been chosen, seen, wanted, not for what I did for others, but for me. I laid the letter beside the fund records and looked at them. $82,000. That's what I'd given up, piece by piece, to ensure Sophie's dreams while burying mine. And what had she given back? A smirk, a laugh, a joke at my expense. I stood, papers in hand, and brewed tea in the kitchen. Sitting at the table, I opened my laptop and logged into the fund. The balance blinked, $82,350.47. Not a dime from Ellen, not a cent from Sophie. Every dollar was mine, through sacrifice, love, and the quiet belief I'd always have a place in their world. I stared and thought, what if I used this not to lift someone else, but to lift myself? The idea terrified and thrilled me. I explored the options, withdrawals, rollovers, reassignments. For the first time in years, I didn't feel old. I felt awake. I didn't withdraw the money that day, but a seed was planted. That letter, that forgotten dream, the weight of those records, they ignited something buried under casseroles, carpool duties, birthday checks, and polite smiles. I wasn't just a grandmother or a caretaker. I was a person, a woman, a writer, a dreamer, and I wasn't done. Something shifted after finding that letter. Not a lightning bolt or a dramatic makeover, just a quiet moment when I looked in the mirror and thought, she's still there. Not grandma, not mom, not the one who bakes, babysits, or pays. Dorothy, the girl who scribbled poems in medical textbooks. The young woman who dreamed of stories that made people feel seen. The version of me I'd let fade under diapers, jobs, bills, and others' needs. For the first time in years, I lit a candle just for its scent, not for guests. I wore a cardigan I hadn't touched in a decade. Blue with tiny velvet buttons. It still fit. I looked in the mirror and whispered, "Hi," like greeting an old friend. Then I opened my laptop, created a new document, and wrote. At first it was clumsy. My fingers hesitated, words felt thick and foreign. But I kept going, paragraph by paragraph, not aiming for perfection, just honesty. I wrote about motherhood, grief, aging, joy, betrayal. I wrote about standing in a party, unseen. I wrote about choosing yourself after decades of being overlooked. I cried as I typed. Not from sadness, but from a release I didn't know I needed. The next morning, I signed up for a free online writing course for mature students, proudly checking the senior box. Every evening, I wrote for 45 minutes. No distractions, no checking on Ellen or Sophie. Just me, tea, and a blinking cursor. It felt like building a bridge, not back to who I was, but forward to who I could be. I dug out an old journal from Ellen's baby years, filled with letters to her, stories of our days, notes on her first laugh, first steps, favorite lullaby. In the back, I found a page I'd written to myself around 1979. Don't forget who you were before this. You're still her. I stared at those words, then smiled. The next day, I did something bolder. I emailed the New England Writers Fellowship. I didn't know if it still existed, but thought, what's the harm? They replied the next morning. The program was active with the senior track. I just needed to submit a story. I chose the one about Sophie, the party, the moment I realized I didn't need to shrink to earn love. I changed names but kept the emotions raw. Submitting it felt like breathing after years of holding my breath. Quietly, without fanfare, I logged back into the college fund. I didn't withdraw the money, but renamed the account from Sophie's college savings to Dorothy's second chance. I stared at those words, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel heavy. I felt light, like I still had time, not to be who I was, but to become someone I'd like to meet again. Renaming the fund Dorothy's Second Chance locked something into place. Not revenge, not bitterness, but clarity. I told no one, not Ellen, not Sophie, not Maggie. Some things are too sacred to voice while they're forming. Instead, I moved in silence. I called the bank, asking about penalties, rollovers, and taxes. A kind woman, Linda, said, "You're within your rights, ma'am. You're the account holder." I thanked her, hung up, and opened a personal savings account named Freedom. I transferred the college fund in small, careful portions. No big moves, just quiet progress. Each day, a piece of my life returned to my hands. I made a spreadsheet, my first in years, listing writing retreats, train trips through New England, art classes at the community center. Nothing lavish, just reminders I was a woman with dreams, with a future. I renewed my old passport, just in case. I woke earlier, not for chores or errands, but for me. I wrote each morning with strong coffee and birdsong outside. That silence was sacred, a peace I hadn't known since motherhood consumed me. I bought wireless earbuds, ones Sophie teased me about not understanding, and listened to podcasts on storytelling, memoir, creativity, and later life. I walked my neighborhood with a bounce, soaking up words like water after a drought. I told no one. This wasn't about proving anything or making them regret their treatment. It was about reclaiming myself, without permission or applause. There's beauty in being underestimated. People stop watching, stop listening, assume you're done. That's when you do your best work. Ellen texted once, asking me to pick Sophie up from her part-time job. I replied politely, "Sorry, I have plans." No explanation, no over-apology, just a boundary. She didn't respond, and I didn't chase her. I kept writing, submitting 3 essays to local contests. One was published online under a pen name. Seeing my words on the screen, I cried. Not for recognition, but because I was doing it, quietly, powerfully, unstoppably. I visited the library, asking if they had slots for guest readings. The clerk said one remained for seniors' night next month. I signed up, unsure if anyone would come, but I'd show up, for me. At night, I read my fellowship story printout, editing lines with a red pen, not because they were bad, but because I was getting better. The kind of better that doesn't need to be seen, just felt. Ellen never asked about the fund. She probably assumed it was waiting for Sophie's tuition. They were too busy or confident to check, and I didn't volunteer. I let them believe what they wanted, because in their world, I was still the woman who gave without question. They didn't see the woman rebuilding herself, brick by brick, word by word, dollar by dollar. The woman no longer waiting to be invited back into their lives. The woman who'd stepped into her own. It started with a text from Ellen. 2 words. "Hey, urgent." I saw it while outlining an essay on generational silence and inherited duty. I let it sit 5 minutes, a small shift, but the old me would have dropped everything. The new me finished her paragraph. Opening the thread, I saw, "Need the login for Sophie's college account. Tuition's due." No greeting, no, "How are you?" Not even a question mark. I stared, then typed slowly, "The fund is closed." A minute later, my phone buzzed. "What? Since when? What are you talking about?" I didn't reply immediately. I poured a glass of lemonade and stepped onto the porch. The hydrangeas I'd planted last spring bloomed. Soft blues, gentle whites, swaying like they held secrets. Back inside, I typed, "I moved the funds." It was my account, my choice. The reply came instantly. "You said that was for Sophie." There it was, a sharp sting, coated in entitlement and unspoken expectation. No thanks for years of saving. No, we should have talked. Just accusation. Just ownership. I left the phone on the table and walked away. I owed no explanation, not after 17 years of deposits met with fading gratitude, not after being laughed at in a yard of borrowed smiles and cheap music. Instead, I opened my laptop and checked my email. A new message from the fellowship. My story was accepted, and I'd been awarded a full scholarship for the Senior Voices residency. 3 weeks in a Vermont cabin, all expenses covered, time to write, to be. I laughed out loud, alone in my kitchen, not a sad laugh, but a deep, alive one. That night, I posted a story excerpt anonymously on a writing forum. Strangers commented, "This gave me chills. I felt every word." A woman messaged privately, "You made me feel seen, thank you." That did what no apology could. Later that week, Ellen called. I didn't answer. She tried again the next day, then texted, "Can we talk?" "You're being unfair." I smiled at unfair. They saw my reclaiming my money, time, and life as unfair. But what was fair about being forgotten? I didn't reply. That silence was the power shift. Days later, Sophie posted cryptically on social media a photo of her college acceptance letter captioned, "Guess dreams don't matter when you're inconvenient." Sympathetic comments followed. What happened? Some people are so selfish. I read them unflinching, knowing the truth. I didn't do this to punish her. I did it to free myself. Whether they saw that or not, I wasn't responsible for their story anymore. I was writing my own. It was a Wednesday, not a holiday or birthday, just an overcast afternoon when I planned to clean the hall closet and make lentil soup. I saw Ellen's car pull into the driveway, a tense flutter in my stomach, the kind you feel when someone you love has hurt you, and you're unsure if they're here to apologize or demand. Ellen drove. Sophie sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, sunglasses on, shielding herself from reality. She didn't glance at the house. I didn't rush to greet them, didn't smooth my hair or rehearse words. I opened the door when they knocked and said calmly, "Hi." Ellen's smile was tight, brittle. Sophie didn't look at me. "We need to talk," Ellen said. I stepped aside, gesturing to the living room. I watched them enter a space I'd once designed for them. Framed photos, a cinnamon-scented candle Sophie loved as a child. Now it felt like props in a play no one believed in. They sat. I didn't. Ellen cleared her throat. "You moved the college money." "I did," I said. "You didn't tell us." "I didn't need to." Silence. Sophie finally looked up, her face unreadable. "That money was for me." I nodded. "It was, until it wasn't." Ellen leaned forward, voice sharpening. "Mom, this isn't like you. You always said education was the greatest gift. You saved for years, called it Sophie's Foundation. I did, I agreed. And then I realized I'd built a foundation for someone who didn't care if I was standing on it. Sophie rolled her eyes. So this is about what I said at the party? Seriously? I looked her in the eye. No, Sophie. It's not about what you said. It's about what you didn't say. For months. For years. Her mouth opened, then closed. I continued. It's about becoming a ghost in my own family. You stopped seeing me as a person and started treating me like a wallet, a servant, an embarrassment. I gave, and somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be anything else. Ellen's voice softened, barely. You should have said something. I did, I said. In every text, every birthday card, every home-cooked meal, every silent moment hoping you'd notice I was hurtin'. Ellen looked down. Sophie scoffed softly. So now what? You take it all back and pretend I didn't deserve it? No, I said gently. You didn't deserve it, not the way you treated me. Love isn't a reward for cruelty. Respect isn't optional. She blinked, stunned. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out a printed copy of my fellowship-accepted story, and handed it to them without ceremony. This was published. I leave for Vermont next month. Ellen looked at the first page, then at me. You wrote this? I did. Sophie looked confused. Wait, you're a writer now? I gave a small smile. No, Sophie, I've always been a writer. You just stopped seeing me as anything but too old. They sat in silence, unsure how to respond. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to comfort them, explain, or soften the truth. It wasn't theirs to soften. It was mine to stand in. I folded my hands. You're both welcome in my life, but on my terms now, not out of obligation, habit, or guilt. Ellen nodded slowly. Okay, I hear you. Sophie looked away, jaw tight. She wasn't ready, maybe never would be. I'd made peace with that. They left soon after. No hugs, no grand resolution, just a door closing quietly, and me still standing, not smaller, not broken, but whole. Weeks after the confrontation, I received the official email. Congratulations, Dorothy. You've been selected as the Senior Voices residency winner. I stared, rereading the words, feeling like someone handed me a life I'd forgotten I could live. The fellowship offered a $30,000 stipend, a month in Vermont, and a chance for my work to be professionally edited and published nationally. I sat, hand over mouth, tears rising, not tears of grief or humiliation, but the kind that whispered, "You did this for you." That afternoon, I printed the acceptance letter and pinned it to the fridge where Sophie's drawings once hung. It felt poetic. 2 days later, Ellen called. She'd seen the announcement. A local paper ran a feature. Retired nurse, 67, wins national honor with story on generational silence. They used my submitted headshot, the first in years where I wasn't hiding behind a grandchild, cake, or Thanksgiving centerpiece. Just me, in the light. Ellen's voice was tight. Why didn't you tell us? I paused, then said calmly, I didn't think you'd care. She hesitated. That story, was it about us? I didn't answer directly. It was about a woman who gave everything and finally remembered to give back to herself. She was quiet. People are asking. Sophie's friends saw it. Some shared it online. I raised an eyebrow. And she's embarrassed. I took a breath. You know what's funny? I've been embarrassed for years, sitting at tables where no one asked how I was, standing at parties where I was the punchline. I stayed silent. Now the silence is over. Ellen tried to pivot. This is all so fast. No, I said softly. It's been decades. You just didn't see or didn't want to. Days later, a letter arrived. No return address. It was Sophie's, handwritten, short. Grandma, I didn't know how much I hurt you. I wasn't thinking. I was selfish and stupid. I'm sorry. I don't expect anything. Just wanted to say I read your story. I cried. I miss you, really. No ask for money, no plea for college help, just regret. That was more powerful than any check I'd written. I folded the letter and tucked it inside the cover of the notebook, holding my first story draft. Not a trophy, but a reminder that truth carries weight, and when you hold it long enough, it shifts everything. Sophie's letter sat in my notebook a week before I touched it again. I didn't call or text. I let it breathe, like a wound uncovered after too long under a bandage. It needed air, honesty, time. I reread it every few days, listening not just to her words, but how she said them. No manipulation, no, I need money, or what about the fund? Just truth. I miss you. It didn't erase the past, but it softened something in me. One evening, a soft knock came, not urgent, not angry, just hopeful. I opened the door, and there was Sophie. No sunglasses, no crossed arms. Just Sophie in a hoodie and jeans, hands in her pockets like a little girl. Hi, she said. Hi, I replied. We stood a moment too long, 2 generations of silence, love, hurt, and years balancing between us. I was in the neighborhood, she mumbled. Well, not really. I just wanted to see you. I stepped aside, motioning her in. She entered the living room like it was a museum, careful, unsure where to stand or what to touch. She glanced at the mantel photos, then at my story printout on the bookshelf. I read it twice, she said, eyes scanning the room. Once fast, once slow. It made me feel awful, but also like I understood you in a way I never did. I sat, gesturing for her to join. She hesitated, sinking into the old armchair where she'd curled up with picture books at 5. I didn't realize how much you did for me, she whispered. I knew you were always there, but I didn't see you. I stayed quiet, letting her speak. I was cruel at the party, she admitted, and for a long time before. I was trying to grow up so fast, I thought I had to push away anything that made me feel small. And love, it makes you feel small sometimes, because it humbles you. I was caught off guard, not by the apology, but the insight. She wasn't a child anymore, not fully. She'd begun the messy journey of owning her pain and the pain she'd caused. I don't expect things to go back, she said. I just wanted to say I get it now. You weren't just helping me. You were giving me your life, and I acted like it was owed. I nodded slowly. It wasn't the cake, Sophie, or the fund. It was that I disappeared, and no one noticed. Her eyes welled. I noticed, but too late. I stood, retrieved her letter from my notebook, and handed it to her. I kept it, I said, because it's the first thing in a long time that felt real. She took it, like it carried weight. We sat in silence, letting the honesty linger. Then she asked, Can we start small? Maybe I come over Sundays, no talk about college or money, just hot cocoa and stories. I smiled. Stories I can do. She smiled too. I want to know who you were before me. I'd like that too, I said, and that was it. No hugs, no grand reunion, just a door that had slammed shut months ago cracking open. She left soon after, and the house felt lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because I didn't need her to fix it. I'd done that myself. If she wanted to be in my life, she was welcome. But I'd never shrink to fit anyone's story again. I live alone now, but not lonely. People get that wrong about women like me, women who poured decades into others. They think our lives are defined by who we gave to, served, raised. When those people pull away, they assume we crumble. But I didn't vanish when they stopped seeing me. I began to appear. It started in Vermont. The residency was everything I didn't know I needed. Crackling fires, pine-scented air, days with nothing but space to create. I was surrounded by strangers who weren't. Other women, many older, who'd set aside their lives for husbands, children, jobs, and were now finding their way back. We shared stories over coffee, read drafts by candlelight, laughed about how no one told us starting over could feel like falling in love with yourself. One night, I stood on the cabin's deck, wrapped in a blanket, gazing at a sky with more stars than I'd seen in years. I thought of Sophie, Ellen, the life I'd lived so long for them, I forgot my own. I wasn't angry or sad. I was free. Back home, I framed my story and hung it near my writing desk, not to brag, but to remind myself what's possible when you stop waiting to be chosen. I talk to Sophie sometimes, on Sundays as she suggested. She brings tea, and we read or flip through old albums. She listens like she never did before, and sometimes she's quiet, but she shows up. At this stage, showing up is the only apology I need. Ellen checks in occasionally. She hasn't asked about the money again. I think she understands this wasn't about finances, but identity, respect, being more than what others wanted. I haven't rebuilt every relationship, and I don't plan to. Healing doesn't always mean bringing everyone back. Sometimes it's bringing yourself home. These days, I write by the window each morning with spiced coffee. I teach a weekly memoir class at the library, listening to other women share their truths for the first time. I've seen tears fall onto notebooks, as if the pages were baptizing them into new beginnings. People sometimes ask, "Do you wish you'd done this sooner?" I used to say yes, but now I know I did it when I was ready, for me, not for validation, permission, or even love. Just for the simple, beautiful truth that my story is mine to live and tell. I don't regret the years I gave or to silence, because without them, I wouldn't be here, on my porch on a breezy spring morning, watching the trees sway as I type the final words of my second short story collection. Not Grandma's story, not Mom's, but mine. And that is everything.